Hi everyone, I'm Matt from Looking to Bitcoin, and today we're going to be doing a Bitcoin rounded to discuss the current market conditions. We're going to try and gain some insight into Bitcoin's recent downwards price section and how we should consider positioning ourselves going forward. We'll be using a number of resources that are all freely available on lookintobitcoin.com, your number one source for Bitcoin information. If you haven't already, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications to ensure you're receiving all of our content as soon as it's released. So right now we're just on the Bitcoin 200 weekly moving average heat map chart here on lookintobitcoin.com. And I think this is a good starting point to really outline what the month of August has really brought us. So if we just zoom in on the current price action, we can see in the month of August, we've had a little bit of downwards price action. We've gone from nearer $30,000 to at times beneath $26,000 towards a $25,000 level. And if we zoom in here, we can see we are currently just fluctuating around this 200 weekly moving average, which is currently sitting at just about $27,500. Now, we have had a recent little pump from the lows we've set just recently. Now, this is in relation to some recent grayscale ETF news we've had, which give us a little bit of a bullish sentiment. It doesn't mean we've actually had an ETF approval yet. I think a lot of people are getting maybe a little bit bullish and a little bit anxious for some upside potential, maybe a little bit earlier than is really warranted. But ultimately, it was a nice little pump we had of the lows, but we are currently struggling to break above this 200 weekly moving average. One thing as well I'd like to quickly point out is this was also pointed out by Michael Saylor, the CEO of MicroStrategy, who owns thousands and thousands of Bitcoin. So if you had needed any more evidence that look into Bitcoin and simple metrics like this really are effective and great profitable tools that you can use for your own investing and analysis, look no further than someone who has $3 billion worth of Bitcoin. But if we just go onto the Bitcoin weekly chart here on TradingView, what we can actually do is load up the 200 weekly moving average heat map indicator just to get a little bit more of an in-depth, close look at this 200 weekly. So if you have a look into Bitcoin subscription, you can add this onto your chart also. But like we said, we had a little bit of a pump off these recent lows we had due to the ETF news. But overall, the month of August has been quite down, not great to be honest. And now, as I said, we are fluctuating around. We're currently beneath as I film this video. So it'll be a very key, interesting level to watch over the coming days and weeks to see if we can regain this 200 weekly moving average and potentially start a bit more of a sustained upwards move rather than just a pump to the upside before retracing it, which has kind of been the story of a lot of 2023. If we just look on a longer time scale, we've had these upward pumps, slow grinds to the downside, upward pumps, slow grind to the downside. So this pump has been a bit smaller in relation to those, but hopefully we can actually sustain a little bit more positive price action. But considering August has been a little bit of a downwards month, a lot of people may be getting a little bit bearish on price action of potentially thinking that this pullback we've had from beneath $30,000 is potentially signaling further downside, more danger. I've seen people on social media potentially stating that new lows are inbound or we're going to have a retest of the previous all-time high at around $20,000. Now, of course, these are possibilities, but ultimately, we've not really seen any signs that that's really going to happen. As I said, this 200 weekly moving average is currently the key level we're watching. And just because we've had a little bit of a retracement from our local highs at around $30,000 doesn't necessarily mean that we need to start changing our bias, start being a bit more bearish on the Bitcoin price action. So what I've done is just loaded up all of the starting low points of each cycle to the following peak that they had to see how frequently we actually get large pullbacks in the Bitcoin price action. So I'll load this up. It is going to be a little chaotic when I first load it up. Here we go. So if we just start here in the first cycles we had in early 2012, 2013, and into 2014, we can see pullbacks of at least 25% throughout a Bitcoin cycle are fairly common. These green areas, as I said, are indicating the low we had from the end of a bear cycle to the peak we had at the end of a bull cycle. Now, you could argue that this cycle was just one big cycle. Maybe you think it's a double peak cycle. Either way, we've had multiple 25% pullbacks. If you did think that this was one cycle, then we can add just a few more 25% pullbacks. But really, if we look at any of the Bitcoin cycles, we can see that 25% or more pullbacks in the Bitcoin price action are really frequent, really common. If we look to the later 2015 into 2016 and 2017 cycle here, we can see we had a 40%, 25%, 40% again, further along 35%, 33%. We had multiple 25% pullbacks throughout this cycle, and yet we still managed to go from just a few $100s to near $20,000. And again, in the most recent cycle we've had, from the lows we set in late 2018 up to the peak in late 2021, 25% pullbacks were very normal. We had here back from 14,000, we had a 45% pullback. And the way I've classified these is after we've had at least a 25% pullback. If we then pumped up at least 25% again, then we can draw another one just to say that these are normal pullbacks. We can see they've happened multiple times. And if we just look to the recent cycle now, we are still yet to actually see a 25% retracement in the Bitcoin price. As crazy as people are flip-flopping their biases, going from very bullish to very bearish, we've not actually had any 25% pullback in the Bitcoin price action yet, which is really giving us the indication that we are still in the early stages of a bull cycle. The trend hasn't necessarily changed. We are still making higher lows, we are still making higher highs, and until that changes for a sustained period of time, I think a lot of people are just getting a little bit jittery due to the fact that Bitcoin has been in a very low volatility period for a sustained period of time now. If I just load up this here on the weekly chart, which is the Bollinger Band width, which is measuring the standard deviation of Bitcoin, we can see here that on a weekly time frame, we've almost never had a period of low volatility sustained for as long as this one. We recently set the new record for the lowest level of weekly Bollinger Band width volatility ever. And if we just look to the previous low, which was here in 2016, and we just draw this rectangle here as almost like a turning point in the Bitcoin markets for volatility, we can see even though we've had this retracement from above $30,000 to $25,000, $26,000, it's really not indicated a big volatile move yet. I think people maybe over-exaggerated this little pullback we had, which is totally normal in a Bitcoin cycle, and maybe acting a little bit irrationally just due to the first little move we've had in Bitcoin in a sustained period of time. But until we really see the Bollinger Band widths increase substantially, until we really see some volatility in the Bitcoin space, hopefully not to the downside, but even if we do, even if it's down to the low $20,000 levels, maybe towards the realized price at $23,000, a move like this, a 30% retracement, like we said, is totally normal within a Bitcoin cycle. Of course, during these, when you're seeing your profits dwindle and your potential unrealized losses begin to increase, of course, it feels terrible. Of course, this is the time when it's very difficult to be in the cryptocurrency space just due to the speculation and volatility. But overall, it is nothing to worry about. We are still completely on track and really in line with where we should be, given where we likely are in the early stages of a bull cycle. So just to summarize, Bitcoin in August saw a pullback to the 200 weekly moving average where price is currently fluctuating around. And historically, accumulating around or especially beneath the 200 weekly moving average has provided outsized returns for patient investors. And pullbacks of 25% or more are very normal for Bitcoin during bull cycles, and we're in fact yet to see a retracement of this size during our current cycle. So as I said, a lot of people are potentially getting irrationally fearful, overly bearish, for what really just can be considered normal Bitcoin price action. And we can see Bitcoin is still experiencing record low levels of volatility, which is almost certainly contributing to these irrational bias flips. And we should expect even more explosive moves in the coming weeks and months. If you'd consider the most recent move to $30,000 to $26,000 a very explosive move, you just need to take a step back, zoom out, and see in the grand scheme of things that this is actually a very minimal move in percentage terms for Bitcoin. And really, we should expect much bigger moves to really take any action or to really convincingly believe that maybe the trend has changed to the downside, or hopefully the trend has really continued to the upside. If you like this video, then please visit lookintobitcoin.com, where you can also consider becoming a site subscriber to gain access to live chats, in-depth newsletters, indicator alerts, private TradingView scripts, and more, all for a fraction of the standard industry price. And let me know in the comments down below and on social media, do you think that this pullback we've seen in Bitcoin is signaling that we're potentially going to get even more pullback, or we're going to go even lower and experience even more drawdown in the Bitcoin and cryptocurrency markets? Or do you think this is just a pretty standard bit of Bitcoin price action, and as we've pumped and hopefully regain the 200 weekly moving average a bit more convincingly, it'll really signal that the bull market is fully in action? Let me know in the comments down below. As I said, I look forward to reading and replying to all of them. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.